Hello and welcome back to Minotaur Hotel. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is right at the start of chapter 2. And yeah, we just left Asterion in the infirmary to recoup a bit and have some privacy and, take a bath in private. I mean, personally, a person in that poor of shape, I would have, forced to allow them to help, personally, I would have forced Asterion to allow me to help him because, I mean, look at him. He was emaciated. He was If he didn't have the ability to die, he would be dead. You know, especially because of the gunshot wound to the side of his face. But yeah. Anyways, well, let's continue and start up chapter 2. Chapter 2: Drink Your Sorrows Away. You're back in the ruined hallway. It stretches into the lobby and further into the hotel. Up ahead, something catches your eye. A leather-bound volume, not too different from the check-in register you found in the reception office, has been carelessly thrown on the floor. A cursory look reveals some of its pages have been torn out, but the cover's back side contains something written in the same script from the deed. The glyphs shift and twist under your gaze, marching into place the harder you look. After a few minutes, however, it turns uncomfortable, as if your mind was being drilled by the paper. You take a seat at the lounge's bar, just a foot away from the green glass shards scattered about over the purple stain. You lose yourself in deciphering this script. Asterion's sentence. Hereby the gods of Olympus sentence the prisoner Asterion to eternal damnation for his meekness and cowardice in the face of adversity. Light around you has shifted. You look back to the garden and the sun is already setting. Time passed in a flash, and now the clop of hooves on marble floor echoes through the corridor. The Minotaur enters the lounge, sees you, and bows. Hello, Asterion. Did you sleep well?
I did, Master. I must thank you for allowing me to rest.
That's good to hear. I take it you have no issue with your bath?
I did not.
Asterion stands up and looks at you directly.
I should ask for your forgiveness. I left you waiting without providing you a tour of the hotel or its inner workings. That was awfully unfitting of my position as the hotel's keeper. I am at your disposal now, however.
There are a few questions eating away at me, if you don't mind, but we can leave them for later if you aren't feeling well.
I am well enough to fulfill my duty. What is it that Master wishes to know?
Well, to start off, how are you feeling? Well, I'll admit I'm a little worried about you. How are you feeling? Was the shower enjoyable? The Minotaur shifts his gaze, trying to read your expression and tone, looking for a tinge of irony or perhaps malice.
I am well. It was quite peculiar showering after all those years. I had forgotten what water felt like. It is fortunate that my wounds were closed. It could have been a painful affair otherwise. For quite a while I stood there under the water, thinking and feeling. All of that is to say, yes, I am doing well. It is kind of you to ask. Is that all you wish to know?
How did you make food appear out of thin air? So, about the food. Back there you just made fruit appear on your hand. It was like the whole world just blinked for a second. What exactly is going on?
I am frightfully sorry, my lord. I failed to explain it ahead of time. This realm operates under very peculiar rules. It relates to the oath I swore. Contracts, oath, promises, all manifestations of the will from the Master can be made to have binding effects. Laws in this land are self-enforcing, if branded by the Lord's might. The oath I swore, it relates to one ancient piece of law, the statute of Joseph the Merciful. In one of its articles, it allows me to summon food. Under most circumstances, the swearing of the oath would have been a formal event, wherein I would have read the full statute, but the situation was dire indeed. I am sorry, my lord. As soon as possible, I shall present to you the statue for your consideration.
Thanks, I don't like signing contracts I didn't read. But don't go overexerting yourself. I suppose this isn't a priority right now. Getting you patched up is more important. Still, that isn't exactly what I asked you about. You can summon food because of the oath, but how can food be summoned like that in the first place? In other words, what kind of place is this? The Minotaur's gaze goes to the floor. His hooves scrape against it.
This realm was created to imprison me. The jailer's mission is to keep watch, and for that purpose the gods saw it fit that matter could be spontaneously created, so that the jailer's job would not be interrupted by petty things such as material limitations. It is, as well, the master's compensation. Being able to create whatever your heart desires out of thin air, that is quite a reward, wouldn't you say?
That's right. This is no small power. With some creativity, anyone could make a fortune off of this place.
Well, there are a few limitations. Mainly, the realm refuses to make metals such as gold and silver in large quantities. But previous masters were quite creative, and that did not stop them from amassing fortunes of their own. As keeper, it is my duty to instruct you in this matter. I can show you how to summon materials.
I'd appreciate that a lot, but we can leave that for later if it's complicated. I have more I'd like to discuss with you.
Very well. What is it that Master wishes to know?
What other mythical creatures are there? I'm still a bit shaken up after learning Greek gods are real, or were. There are a lot of implications to that, you know? For example, I can assume that there's an afterlife then?
Perhaps. I was sent to an afterlife after my death. It was called Hades. But that was back then, thousands of years ago. I know not what happened to the gods or if their realm persists to this day. Neither do I know if other afterlife realms exist in the first place, although I do believe that that is the case. I am aware, however, that the worship of the Olympians has long gone out of favor. If Master would entertain my curiosity, is it still so?
No one worships them, no. It's a dead religion, that's for sure. Most you'll find is people studying it during history classes, and some places do use the gods as symbols. That's about it.
I see. Then in this regard, nothing changed since I was locked away.
There's something I would like to know, however. You told me about the gods and other mythical beings. I want to know more about that, if you don't mind.
Ah, I see. Yes, that is a question masters of previous times struggled with as well. Despite my thousands of years, I must admit, I do not possess complete knowledge about the variety of mythical beings that exist. I know only of those that pass by this hotel, and of what they were kind enough to share with me. They used a charm to pass unnoticed as humans. It wasn't always like that. That custom began only a handful of centuries ago. When I was a child, there was no such thing. My true form was plain for everyone to see, and Father Minos made sure I was seen. Regardless, their charms never worked in this realm. I do not know why, but it was always a constant. It was quite peculiar back then. Humans and supernatural guests mingled together. It was always jarring at first, but after a while, it becomes special. Humans are eager to learn about the unknown, and mythical beings yearn to live without a disguise. Now, back to the 21st century. They had taken to using what was the word again? It was a booklet they carried around.
A passport?
Yes, a passport. They would have it enchanted and would keep it close, always. It was inconspicuous. But they'd keep multiple charms with them, jewelry, oftentimes, in case they were separated from their documents.
Did they make fake passports then? How was that?
Oh, I don't think so. I am sorry that I do not know much about it, but I had the impression that these booklets were issued by governments. As in, the government's made the enchanted passports. A few times I was told that they had to be registered. It was quite common for mythical beings, even the staff, to be required to report back to their countries for bureaucratic affairs. Or for warfare. Master Jean-Marie was not the only man we lost in the Great Wars.
I didn't expect there to be bureaucracy around mythical beings.
Indeed, it is a tad peculiar. But I would stress that all of this I learned from previous guests. I never saw it for myself.
Before I forget, I found these inside a safe near the reception. You give Asterion the bundle of passports. Are these the enchanted passports? They don't seem anything out of the ordinary. The Minotaur looks over each of the passports. His brow furrows, and for a second, it and his lower lip quivers.
Yes, this is it. I recognize the names. These are the passports. They hated these things. These were their shackles. Which is why they were so eager to stay and work here, in a place where they did not have to hide their true forms. It is not only about their shape either. There is something else these passports did. It made them easy to forget and go unnoticed. Again, I never witnessed it for myself, but often I was told it was terribly difficult to make friends, establish relationships to, when your loved ones are prone to forgetting you ever existed.
That sounds rough, to say the least. Theirs must be a lonely existence. Asterion sinks in thought as he flips over the passport's pages. He did not seem to hear you. When he closes the last one, his gaze returns to you with a somber look. That is, more somber than before.
Does Master have more questions?
I think that's all I had in mind for now. This is a lot to take in. That gods and mythical creatures exist, for starters, and that this place can just create matter out of thin air. Thanks for telling me all about that. I'll just need some time to process it all.
It is a pleasure to serve. Could I provide Master with a drink? Would that please you?
He looks behind you to the wall covered by dozens of bottles of liquor. Well, I don't think those are safe. I checked a few of them, they weren't smelling right.
That will not be an issue. I can muster more for Master.
Very well, go on. The Minotaur walks behind the counter. The world blinks around you, and when you look again, he's holding a bottle of whiskey. He walks with a spring in his step, but stops once he sees the purple stain on the floor. Whatever smidgen of chirpiness was on his face is gone. He lowers himself to the floor and runs a hand over the dried out wine. He tries scraping the dust off the ground, then rubbing his hand on it to no avail. What's on your mind? The Minotaur speaks without looking up to you.
He went all the way, the previous master. Locking me away wasn't enough. He had to kick out all the guests and go as far as breaking the bottles. He knew the wine could heal me. I had one in the infirmary in case I got hurt and needed help, and one here for my enjoyment. I hope he didn't break the others as well. It is impossible to willfully summon more.
The Minotaur rises up and supports himself on the counter. He summons a rag and goes through the motions of dusting.
No matter. Now, what does the Master's want? I should tell you up front, the hotel's liquor is quite impressive.
Asterion may be up and walking, but he's still far from being well. He can use the help. You mentioned having more wine bottles. Where are they? I'm sure I can fetch them for you. Asterion looks off to the side, seemingly thinking about your proposal.
It is not proper for the keeper to be assisted by the Master. I suppose, however, it would be my duty to take you there regardless. If memory serves me well, there ought to be a bottle in the Master's quarters.
The two of you return to the hotel's lobby. The spiral staircase, now tinged orange by the skylight, remains as welcoming as before. The fourth floor has no doors, however.
Here, This floor is dedicated to the master and those he allows in. The hotel bends to the master's will. Wish for a door, and it will be done. My power is similar to yours, albeit much weaker. In due time, the hotel shall conform from the ground up to your vision.
It barely requires you to focus, just a passing thought is enough to make the hotel flicker in and out of reality. The door welcomes you. It flickers away after you and Asterion cross its threshold. The living room ahead of you seems to have resisted the damage of time better than the rest of the hotel. It is dusty and some chunks of wall show the beginnings of mold, but that is nothing compared to the devastation you saw in the kitchen. Asterion says nothing at first. His gaze seems to be lost in the distance as he walks around inspecting the room. There are lines of wooden carvings on shelves. During the Minotaur's silence, you take the chance to explore it yourself. The living room is a sprawling lounge made to receive guests, both in great number and for intimate get-togethers. Under the sunset's light, the wooden floor colors the room with a soft, warm hue. There's a master's bedroom with a vast closet still filled with clothing. None you'd use, however. It's a wardrobe pulled straight from the 30s, organized with a tireless devotion. There's also a large office, the kind you'd expect from an important executive. Sitting on the desk is a selection of finely decorated fountain pens and a stash of documents, for the most part written in delicate calligraphy. Most of the documents are signed by a Master Jean-Marie, although a handful bear an illegible scribble for a signature. There's a finely furnished bathroom off in a tight hallway to the side of the living room. At the end of the corridor, after a sharp turn, there's a cramped, windowless chamber. It has a handful of remnants of a living room's warmth, albeit muted. The wood's color is faded. The ceiling is a meter lower. There is little to no furniture. There is, however, an Ostra bed that looks larger than your typical single. Besides it is a tiny chest of drawers, with a handful of dusty poetry books piled on top alongside more wooden carvings. This room affords privacy, but little else. Asterion is going over it when you arrive. He cradles every wooden carving in the room, examining them one by one. Many of the carvings depict bulls. He opens one of the books and a page marker falls from it. He looks down at it, but doesn't bother picking it up. The Minotaur opens a small closet off to the side and takes out what seems to be a long piece of fabric. He smells it, or perhaps hugs it to his chest. His bony snout leaves a stain of blood dust on it. He sighs and shudders. The Minotaur looks back to you, acknowledging your presence for the first time since arriving here.
I am frightfully sorry. I was lost in thought. This floor is the master's quarters. It contains your bedroom, office, living room, and any other installations you wish to add. This room we are in, this was my bedroom. I serve the hotel, but above all else, I serve the master. It is often considered convenient to have me around, as I can cook and help the master however he sees fit. There were masters who had children, for instance. I would assist in tending to them, providing entertainment and play while the master rested. Master Jean-Marie was a man of culture. He enjoyed having me play my lyre for him at night. The Minotaur's gaze wanders away again. His hands caress a wooden carving. The wine should be in the kitchen. The two of you go there. This time there's no purple stains on the floor or glass shards thrown about. The empty bottle is gingerly placed on the counter besides the sink. Asterion shrinks down again. At least he did not damage Master Jean-Marie's carvings. Was that the last bottle? No, I have one last bottle stashed away, and I'm sure it must be intact. There's no way he learned about that one. It's all the way downstairs. All the way? About 30 floors down, yes. Worry not, Master. It is getting late already. I can prepare you a proper meal and dust off your quarters. You must rest for the night. I shall deal with this affair after you've gone to sleep. No, I cannot let you do that.
You're in no state to go up and down 30 flights of stairs. Tell me where to find this bottle. While I go down there, you can check over the quarters if you want to go over your previous master's belongings. For a single moment, you see Asterion looking off to the side, pondering before giving you his response.
Very well, I obey. The 25th underground floor is much like this one, without doors. You may command the hotel to reveal the way. It's where we've stored things over the centuries. All the way down the corridor, there is a wall painting. The bottle should be in front of it.
You answer with thumbs up as you summon a door out. Once more, you're enveloped by the sunlight draping from the skylight. Your echoing footsteps have a sonority to them, a twinge of life in this abandoned hotel. Once you reach the underground floor, however, your path becomes darker. Your footsteps now sound shy in front of an oppressive veil. The 25th floor cannot come soon enough. A plaque on the featureless wall greets you. The door flickers in front of you with a similar eagerness. The hallway extends far into the distance, its sides lined with all sorts of objects. Armor sets, furniture, statues, treasure chests full of trinkets from all ages. What do you do? Let's examine the trinkets. You take a moment to examine your surroundings. Off to the side, you notice a long display case with what appears to be a set of armor on mannequins. There's a dozen different models, although they all vary a lot from each other. They seem to have been made over multiple centuries. They all seem lightweight and not meant for large-scale warfare. A small plaque off to the side has Hotel Guards armor sets written on it, alongside the years in which each of the sets was manufactured. The oldest one dates back to the 14th century. It would seem, however, that the collection is not complete. There's one mannequin whose armor is partly missing. It has a purple sash tied to its waist. There's not much else to see in the armor sets. You proceed down the hallway. As you reach the corridor's end, the objects take a sharp turn to what you'd expect from a museum on ancient Greece. There's the wall painting Asterion told you about. Right in front of it is a sealed bottle of wine. It is covered in dust. Its label is faded. You obtained wine bottle. Off to the side, there's a glass case containing a jagged purple rock in the vague shape of a double-headed axe head. It's dripping an oily, dark red liquid down the case. The goo has pooled on the case's bottom, wafting an unpleasant, bloody stench. The case is locked by an old padlock. We've got what you came here for. You make your way back upstairs. The setting sun's orange tones color the entire apartment. It turns the unpleasant dust in the air into thousands of sparkling diamonds. The previous master's carvings stare out at you, wide-eyed and beckoning you further into the quarters. The smell of old dust seems so small compared to how sweetly the room welcomes you. If a place could be alive, and if it could ever be naked, this is it. The hotel itself embraces you, its intimacy laid bare. Nothing moves, and Asterion is nowhere to be seen. Silence reigns, save for a faint hum of life. You leave the wine bottle on the living room table. You delve deeper into your quarters, and the hum grows louder and sharper. It's like breathing, ragged and pained. The dust visible under the sunlight shudders. The sound is coming from the office. Asterion stands over the desk, his back to you, sobbing. Your footsteps are not enough to make him aware of your presence. The Minotaur sobs again and again, each one coming from deeper inside of him. They begin meek, hardly more than a snort, but he lays his hands on the desk and curls forward. His vertebrae jut sharply from his deathly thin skin, made more obvious by how he hunches over. He spits out a sob from the depths of his lungs. The dam bursts. He breaks into a wave after wave of grunts and half-mumbled screams. He presses his face against the desk and claws at it, leaving his mark in the pristine wood until he falls to the ground, curled up like a child. He sees you then with his tear-drenched eye and ignores your presence. Master or not, you are too small. He curls further into himself, mouth covered by his hands as he lets out another muffled yell. The Minotaur's voice breaks midway through, and he goes silent, even if his mouth is still locked in agony. But Asterion looks up to you, aware of your presence, and makes no effort to hide or cower. In fact, he tries to speak, but you cannot understand his slurred words, only that his voice has a tone of welcoming. You cross the gap separating the two of you one step at a time. Asterion's eyes does not avert from you. You sit by his side, back to the desk, and only then does his gaze drop down to the floor into further sobbing. You drape an arm over his shoulder and pull him into you. The Minotaur doubles down on his crying, now muffled by your shirt. His fingers dig into you. They'd hurt, were they not so emaciated. You rub the back of his head and let the Minotaur go at his own pace. As the sun sets further, darkening the room, his crying grows quieter and more discreet as well. When all is dark except for the stars shining beyond the window, Asterion's hands relax, and he slouches fully onto your chest. He almost seems to be asleep, but you catch his eye looking up at you. Asterion's pacified, but you give him a few more minutes to make sure. His fingers dig at you one last time, right as he sighs. You pat him on the back and help him up. He says nothing about what just happened, but accepts your hand, and when you leave the office, he stays close by your side. Back in the living room, you guide Asterion to the sofa. He sits without questioning, but accompanies you with his gaze as you open the wine bottle and bring it over to him. It was just where you said it would be. Asterion caresses the bottle. Thank you. Cheers. Asterion forgoes using a glass entirely. He leans his head to the side so that the wine doesn't drip from his exposed jawbone and drinks straight from the bottle. He savors the first gulp. He sighs, leaning his head back, and lets out a groan as his entire body relaxes. Then he returns to the bottle, this time drinking it in earnest. From the corner of his eye, he looks at you. A tinge of shame spreads on his face as a drop or two of wine drips from his exposed jaw. It doesn't take long before his arms start shaking, however, for his emaciated musculature holding the position for long is a challenge. I'm gonna help him hold up the bottle. You stand and help him hold the bottle up. It's like bottle feeding a calf. Asterion looks up to you with a sharpened gaze. He does not reject your help, but his brow frowns and his eyes lock onto you in petulance. Barely a minute passes before he seizes the bottle and goes back to holding it up himself. He wastes no time and drinks the entire contents of the bottle without stopping, going so far as to shake the bottle to get the last drops. Asterion leans back on the sofa, a half smile painted on his face. Thank you so much for the wine, Master. I feel better already. It won't be long now before it starts taking effect. Don't mention it. It was nothing. Is that so? Master, if it is not impertinent of me, would you answer a few questions? Sure, I don't see how that could be a problem. I wish to know about the war. How did it end? War? Which war? The Second World War, the conflict between the Axis and the Allies. France was occupied. How did it end? Does France still exist? Yes, it does. France is doing fine. The Allies won the war. A lot of stuff happened since then. You briefly tell him France's history after the Second World War, especially the aftermath of the war. Oh, I'm so relieved to hear that. I've spent all those years locked away thinking about it. Master Jean-Marie talked so many times about France. Paris this and that, but also about the countryside.
The fields of lavender, the fragrances, the vineyards, all sorts of wine. Master Jean-Marie could never go a meal without a glass. He grew up in a village near Bordeaux. Yes, he always said his village's wine was the best, period. Master Jean-Marie fought in the Great War too. He found his way to the hotel as a guest himself, a shell-shocked young man fresh off the battlefield. He inherited the deed from the previous master, and his rule over the hotel was a sight to behold. He was very kind, had a preference for bringing in victims of war. It wasn't easy caring for so many amputees and shell-shocked men, but it was worth it. He loved it here, but I suppose he loved France the most. I couldn't dissuade him from returning home to liberate his country. He died in 1944. I felt it right when it happened. Felt the bullet going through my head in the middle of the night. 1 week later, the next master arrived. Jean-Marie left a will, leaving the hotel's deed to his brother, Master Clement. Clement wasn't bad at first. He was very eager to please, to be of use to the guests. But there was something in him. A greed, I suppose. To merely be liked wasn't enough, you see. He and Master Jean-Marie differed greatly. Jean-Marie had a vision to bring comfort to those affected by war. Clement, on the other hand, didn't want to be liked, but worshipped. He had his eyes on a guest, a woman who held his mind in the palm of her hand. I can only believe it went badly, and so well, you saw what he did to me. The guests are gone, and the hotel has been left to rot. I had glimpsed the beginning of madness in his eyes. I am no fool. It was clear he was no sane man, but I hoped he'd be harmless.
I'm pretty sure we met the Clement that he was talking about. I believe I met this Clement you speak of. He gave me the hotel's deed, talked a bit about himself, said he squandered his one chance at something good. He's senile now, can barely talk right. He was looking for someone to take over the place because none of his kids would do it. When I checked the deed, it all seemed like gibberish too. I could only believe he wasn't thinking right and gave me some used napkin. He said he had done bad stuff during his life, but I never imagined it was as bad as what I saw here. Asterion's brow is furrowed and his eye wanders. He twiddles his thumbs while you speak.
He's still alive then.
He closes his eye, wrinkling his visage in anger. Asterion looks up at the ceiling. His voice is relaxed now, almost soothing, but it carries a spike of sobriety.
Master, if once again you would accept it, may I ask a question? This one, however, may be out of place for me as a keeper.
You give him permission.
The labyrinth was created to torture me as a punishment for my crime, but over the years, the human masters chose to impose a different will onto this realm. It began with a young man who took pity on me, and over the generations it became a haven for the lost. Each master had a vision for it. We had a good run, a few good centuries, ever since we started, until, as you saw, Clement came along. I wish to know your intentions. That is awfully out of place for me as a prisoner. You are my captor, and I shall obey whatever your will may be. Nonetheless, I wish to have my impertinent question answered, if it isn't much. Is it your will to carry on with the hotel's mission? To offer sanctuary to those lost and with nowhere to go? I shall let you know, before you answer, that I am used to suffering. I've been through a lot worse than what you saw today. If your will is to torture me, like Master Clement did, then you need not pretend. However, you accepted my oath and took me into your service, and now you've treated me with kindness. I would not believe, then, that you are not like him. So tell me, is your wish to uphold the hotel's mission to provide respite to those in need? Be honest, if you will. My servitude to you remains regardless of your choice, as I have none to myself.
Do you wish to uphold the hotel's mission?
But of course.
I already know the answer to this one, so... I don't know what I was getting into when I accepted Clement's deed. A lot has happened in a single day, and I couldn't have imagined any of this from his ramblings. But yes, I intend to uphold the hotel's mission now. I want to be a good master, to the hotel and to you. I am not trying to trick you, but what you've told me, I have no reason to. Maybe it's hard for you to believe me right now, but I mean it. Asterion does not answer at first, only his deep breathing cuts the room's silence.
It's been so long. I don't know for how many years I was locked away. I must admit, the mere thought of asking me gives me chills. Master, can you imagine, for centuries I've been tending to this hotel. It was my mercy, what saved me from torture and gave me purpose. It was hard work, and not all masters have been kind over the centuries, but it was wonderful nonetheless. I enjoyed every moment of it. And then, Master Jean-Marie died. I could have done more to try and stop him. I should have. Then he came, Clement. I am used to pain, but I have grown accustomed to having people, a mission, a purpose. Being locked away didn't hurt half as much as having my guests kicked out. Today you freed me, took me into your service, and now you tell me you wish to be a good master, to the hotel and to me. Allow me to speak frankly. I am afraid of you, terribly so. You are my jailer. Over the centuries I grew comfortable with enjoying my masters, but after Clement, it's all come back to me. I am so afraid of what you can do to me and to the hotel. There's no choice but to obey your every command. I am so sorry for saying this. It is profoundly out of place for the keeper to address the master in such a way. I suppose that, even if I am afraid of you, I've lost my fear of pain and overstepping boundaries. All of that said, despite my fear, I find myself wanting to believe you.
Asterion gets up from the sofa and walks up to you. He's clearly tipsy, stumbling about as he approaches. The Minotaur kneels before you.
I wish dearly for your words to be true. I am not afforded choice on whether or not I shall obey you. I am a prisoner. But if indeed your words are true, if your heart is truly set on being a good master, then I shall follow you, not out of duty, but out of want. And wherever allowed true freedom, I will remain by your side. I swore to serve you, and now I swear to follow you, for as long as your word holds true.
He looks up at you. The room is dark, lit only by moonlight coming through the window, but you can see a glimmer in the Minotaur's eye. You pull him from his kneeling position into a hug. He is light, barely heavier than a child. In your arms, he is stiff and cold, but just as your hands stroke his back, he returns the gesture and rests his muzzle on your shoulder. He stiffens once, twice, and presses his face into your neck.
Thank you, Master.
He breathes in deeply, as if learning your scent. Night quickly settles. The hotel has no electricity, but you can do with candles. Your shadow and Asterion's slither on the walls, trembling alongside the flickering flames. The master's quarters are filled with velvety sounds of life, breathing, footsteps, furniture creaking under you. From outside, a passerby would see this ruined hotel with a single, candlelit window. If he perchance tried exploring it, he'd only find unending hallways of black and white, marble tiles echoing with the rustling of his clothes. He would seek out the comfort of this candlelit room, but would never find it, locked away as it is behind a doorless wall. Silence strips back over the two of you. More often than not, Asterion is turned towards you, following with his gaze. Just when you realize how hungry you are, he summons a humble feast for you. Fruit, cheese, water, even a regular bottle of wine. He turns his back to you to set the table. He stumbles a bit, and a few apples roll off to the ground. You catch him giving you a sideways glance. His nostrils flare under his nervous breathing. Asterion seizes. His back broadens as he breathes in, and then his shoulders slouch forward with his exhale. He gazes back to you, as if trying to say something, and after a few seconds, he returns to setting the table. His tail flicks behind him, perhaps even with some chirpiness. When dinner is ready, he presents it to you with a half smile on his lips. Your candlelit dinner is simple and uneventful. Any offer to have Asterion eat alongside you is brushed off with a shake of his head. It's a long, deliberate movement. His single ear whips to and fro besides his head. You ask him if there's any way to restore the hotel's electricity.
There is, yes. We must light the hotel's hearth, and for that, we must use a special object. It is a set of bronze mirrors that focus sunlight. It generates a pure flame. It will bring the entire hotel back to life.
Shortly after, with nothing else to do for the night, the both of you find rest in your respective rooms. Hades, Voyage. The Minotaur dreams. Before Athens and Sparta, there was Crete, where Zeus was born and raised. Wild goats left their cloven marks on its slopes, carved out of cooled magma from the age of the Titans. Its soil, rich and hard, bore the promise of prosperity. Crete was a cradle, safe and fertile for early mankind, as it was for Zeus, first of the Olympians. His son Minos the First made his way there and became its founder and king. When death came for him, Minos was made judge of the dead. His lineage bore many kings for Crete, the prosperous cradle of man. There was another who carried the name of Minos, a man who made a pact with Poseidon, god of the sea. From the foamy waters, the Olympians sent a white bull to signal his favor, and in turn the man promised to sacrifice it. But Minos took for himself that which was meant for the gods. For his hubris, Poseidon cursed his household. His wife, Persephone, was struck with lust for the beast and ordered the legendary craftsman Daedalus to craft a hollow heifer. Persephone took the bull's lurch and became pregnant with its child. So was born the Minotaur. Or Minotaur, I guess. Persephone's infamy survives. Crete fell in favor of Athens, which in turn was dragged away by Rome, which too was consumed by time. But Persephone's disgrace remains, much like the tale of the cannibal half-bred she birthed survives. But for the Minotaur, she was mom, and she called him Asterion, her starry-eyed son. He drank from her breast, like any boy, and he played with his siblings even if his visage betrayed the sin which begat him. The Minotaur dreams of the vast field of white asphodel flowers where he'd go with his sister, Ariadne, holding her fingers, where they would sit by a tree and he'd nap with his head on her thighs. Asterion dreams of Crete, the palace of Gnosis, where he was raised, and of his inescapable fate, the labyrinth crafted by Daedalus, where he met his end. Before the first hairs of a beard would have sprouted were he fully human, he was carted off to a stone labyrinth deep within one of Crete's valleys. The exit was blocked off, and he was left only with an axe he could hardly raise. A decade passed before a visitor came. Asterion could no longer think. Language had escaped his mind altogether, so lonely had he become. His visitor, Theseus, had crossed the sea for the Minotaur's head. The hero expected a battle, but found only a beast deserving of mercy. Asterion did not reject the hero's pity. At last, he dreams of the Asphodel Meadows. It's a mercy. It's the end of his suffering. But he awakens to the labyrinth again. He jumps from dream to reflection. Master Jean Marie and Clement, the cold room, the new master, freedom from darkness, food, and wine. Asterion grasps the dusty sheets. It's been decades since he's slept on a bed. He feels no bed sores on his back. Instead of the cold room's stench, there is only the slightly moldy smell of his old room. His lips, half bull, half skeletal, threaten to curl into a smile, but doubts eat away at him, churns in his stomach. The Minotaur unceremoniously rises and opens the closet. No matter what comes next, he must work, and then work some more. While he checks his garments, he mumbles an old poem from memory.
You came and did well to come. I longed for you, and you brought fire to my heart, which burns high for you.
These old clothes don't fit him. The mirror makes it clear how much of a disgrace he is. The gaping fleshless hole in his skull makes his ichor bubble and threaten to burst from his mouth. But he's less of a disgrace than he was the day before, and for the last 80 years, there's some mercy in that. He forces a half smile and goes out. As soon as he steps out, however, his ears flicks. He catches the distant tune, chirpy, one could say even joyous. It is faint, but unmistakable. The smile disappears from his face. Chapter 3, The Foreman, and where I'm going to leave it for today. Oof. Oh, let me save. Yeah. So that was what was it, like the first 2 chapters and the prologue of Minotaur Hotel. So you got to meet Asterion as he was left by Clement, with a gaping hole on his face and the hotel in ruins, basically reflecting the sorry state that he's in. But hopefully we'll be able to do something about that, in the next coming chapters. I mean, I already played a part of this, so I know what's coming up next, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. I feel bad for him. Like, there is some scenes and some dialogue that reflect how I feel for Asterion, and eventually, you'll kind of get the hint that I don't want to be evil or mean to him, so yeah. Expect a very pacifist route. Anyways, but yeah. For those of you who have not played Minotaur Hotel or that do not know anything about it, what do you guys think? For those of you that have played it, do you have any advice, or do you, without revealing too much, is there anything that you would like for me to do, in case that I myself don't know about it? Because I only know up to a certain point what you're not what you're supposed to do, but what you can do. So yeah. I mean, there is a reason why I picked leader after all. So yeah. Expect more of these episodes in the coming weeks, because I actually don't know how much content there is for this. I'm trying to keep these episodes like around the 1 hour mark, but this one I know probably goes over that. But that's because I was trying to get to this point before I stopped. So yeah. Anyways, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Minotaur Hotel yourself, there will be a link down in the description. If you would like to support the creators of this massive undertaking, because trust me, this is a very complex game. So if you would like to support them, I would put a link down for their Patreon, because I'm pretty sure they have one. And if you would like to follow the Minotaur Hotel Twitter, I would also put a link down for that. And I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.